You're listening to Stories Behind the Songs with Chris Blair. For more information, check out chrisblair.com. Hey everybody, here's another episode of Stories Behind the Songs podcast. I'm your host, Chris Blair, and on this week's episode, I sat down with a good buddy of mine, Dylan Altman. I've known Dylan for about 17, 18 years now, and I just love this guy. He's been through so much, and he shares so much of that story in this episode. He's got a blues and rock-heavy background, and he's going to tell us about his instant draw to the industry after watching the music video Jump by Van Halen. From that moment on, Dylan knew that music was what he needed to do, not wanted, but needed. And he basically made up his mind and started a band and has been playing and writing music ever since. Dylan has written so many songs throughout the course of his career, with number ones for Tim McGraw, Jake Owen, and Jason Aldean. He's had even more cuts with people like Eli Young Band, Trace Adkins, JT Hodges, Eric Paslay, Jonathan Jackson, and more. You're going to hear about that journey and also the full story behind his number one, Barefoot Blue Jean Night with Jake Owen, and his journey in the music industry and struggles with sobriety, and how the day after we recorded this episode was when he became 4 years sober and is doing better than ever. I really want to give him some big props for going deep in this. This is not what we expected to talk about on this episode, but as someone who lives and breathes the music life every day, you know, it's just a fact that in the industry that we're in, there are a lot of social events, there are a lot of things that we do, and alcohol is around all of it. Doesn't have to be a bad thing, but I've seen so many friends let it turn into being a bad thing. And Dylan goes deep into that journey and talks about the two most important days of his entire life. One was when his daughter was born, and the other was when he was arrested in an airport because he was blackout drunk, and that day changed his life. So even if you're not into music and you somehow found yourself listening to this podcast, this is a story in itself just to go deep on. It's so great. Dylan, again, thank you so much for sharing this. I think it's going to hit a lot of people, and I loved it. Dylan is now booking and playing shows with his blues band. He's also about to release his very own show with his daughter, where they cook with songwriters and special guests and play music afterwards. I'm so excited for that. It's going to be coming out sometime about mid to late October, probably around the time that we put this episode out. And as a singer, songwriter, and foodie myself, I personally can't wait to see it. Heck, maybe I'll even be a guest on there, Dylan. Just give me a shout. Love to come eat food and play music with you anytime, brother. Again, loved having this guy on. He's just a great guy. So check out the liner notes. You're going to hear all about that. Also, ways that if you are struggling with sobriety, we're going to throw that in the liner notes as well. Just different ways that you can find help. And make sure that you go check out Dylan at a show and support the food show that's going to be coming out. So also, as always, help us spread the word of this podcast, Stories Behind the Songs with Chris Blair, as we continue to grow. We appreciate the support, and the more you support us, the more we get to keep doing this. So give it a like. Hit that like, subscribe, follow button, share it with a friend wherever you're listening, and we can't thank you enough. Let's get to it. Here is my buddy, Dylan Altman. Hey everybody, here's another episode of Stories Behind the Songs podcast. I am your host, Chris Blair, and today I am here in Nashville, Tennessee with Dylan Altman. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man.
Yeah,
Very happy to be here.
We were just talking right before this starts. We've known each other for about 17 years now.
At least, right?
Yeah.
Because it was back with Paslay when he first started, so it's 2006, I think, 17 years.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's been fun. I've gotten to watch a lot of success with you. You've got number ones with Jake Owen, Tim McGraw, Jason Aldean. There's just all kinds of great stuff to talk about. So we're going to get there. But before we do, take me back to, you're from New Jersey. So take me back to how you got into music and what got you to Nashville.
Happily, I tell you, it's great, man. I grew up in a family that was very artistic. And my mother was a painter, a French abstract painter. And my dad, he's still around. He's a musician, a jazz pianist, but a wonderful composer too, like contemporary classical stuff. And he had a studio in our house where he had his piano. And I used to come home every day because there was always music playing in the house. And I had a sister 10 years older who listened to music. And I would come home from school like when I was 5 years old. And I'd walk into my dad's studio, and they had all these great vinyl records of the Beatles. And that was my real introduction to music, man, because I got home and I would put on, it's so funny, I'm so technologically challenged and everything. But at 5 years old, I was able to put on a record on a vinyl record on a record player and listen. You know, back then it was top to bottom, so you didn't skip songs.
Right.
It was a hassle to move the needle, right? So I would listen to Rubber Soul, Revolver, Sgt. Pepper's, Hard Day's Night, Help, and my all-time favorite, Abbey Road. And I would listen to those things every day. And it started growing to where, you know, again, my mom listened to stuff, my dad listened to stuff, my sister. And then at 13, I got into guitar. And it was only I didn't have any desire to do guitar, but my dad was teaching a friend of his who's a guitar teacher. He was teaching his son piano. He said, well, do you guys want to trade off? Maybe he'll teach you guitar. And I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. And at that time was when I first saw the video for Jump by Van Halen.
Oh, yeah.
And the moment I saw that video and saw Eddie Van Halen, because I hadn't really listened to Van Halen prior to that. And what I saw was this guy, if you watch that video, he's smiling the entire time. And he's jumping up and down and he's having fun. And it's such a great song. And that was it, man. From the age of 13, I wanted to be a rock star. That's what I wanted to do. So, you know, I started learning and playing in bands. And, you know, when I was 15 in Jersey, it was great because I had one band, which was like my metal band, where I was playing like everything from Van Halen and White Snake and Zeppelin and Iron Maiden, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
But I also had a group that was with guys 10 years older than me because I was getting pretty good at it. And these guys, they were in their mid-20s. So at that time, they were playing like Squeeze and Elvis Costello and Springsteen stuff. Because where I grew up in Jersey, it's Monmouth County, which is where Springsteen's from. And Springsteen grew up in Freehold, which is about 10 minutes from where I grew up. So Springsteen, you can imagine how big he is there.
Oh, yeah.
And you can't really avoid it. It's there. And I came to it naturally because my sister had all of his records on vinyl. And I started playing Born to Run on vinyl. I started listening to Wild the Innocent and E Street Shuffle and stuff. So all that, it just became what I wanted to do. It's like, you know, I was a jock. I played sports and stuff. I did a little bit of everything. I made people laugh. I did this and that, but it was always music that I wanted to do. And then that got me to Berklee College of Music. You want me to keep going?
Yeah, man. Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Yeah.
This is one of those times you ask me one question, we could be like an hour.
That's all right. Let's go.
But it's a good story. So,
yeah.
So I get to Berklee and, you know, again, my dad, musician, he wanted me to have something. It's so funny. He wanted me to have something to fall back on in case I failed as a rock star,
Yeah.
which was, you know, highly likely, right? So he said, you know, because again, a great composer, he said, I want you to try film scoring, which is, you know, writing music for movies.
Yeah. Which
I love movies. I watch almost a movie a day. I got to be honest with you. I love watching movies, old movies, new movies, horror films, you name it, everything. And so I did that. But at the same time, I had a band, and I was really starting to learn how to write songs. I'll never forget the first time I wrote a song that my dad liked. Because, you know, I was writing crappy stuff. Like, really, we all do, right?
Yeah.
I can imagine what your first few songs are like, too. It's just awful. But we have to write those to get to that point. So my first one, it was just a blues tune. I'll even show it to you, man. It was a blues tune. I was really getting into the Allman Brothers and Stevie Ray Vaughan, and it was called Dissatisfied. And it was all based off of this. It's like a blues tune, right?
Yeah.
And that was the song where the first time I saw anyone, but especially my dad, respond. Like, my dad is like, he'd tell his friends, hey, Dylan, come play that song, Dissatisfied. Or he always butchered names and say, Dissatisfaction, or whatever the hell. He always had a new name for it. But that inspired me to be like, okay, maybe I can do this. And because at that time, Eddie Van Halen was a guitar player. I just wanted to be Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah.
And Eddie Van Halen, he wrote the music, but he wasn't writing the lyrics and everything, and he wasn't singing. But what happened is when I got to Berkeley, my first day, man, I'll tell you, I was from that small town in Jersey. So in my small town in New Jersey, I was like the Eddie Van Halen of the small town in New Jersey, which is not that great of a guitar player, you know what I mean? And you go to Berkeley, because Berkeley College of Music is like one of the best music schools in the world. Like people come from all over there. And this roommate, I open up the door, and he's a dude from Long Island, and he is just killing it. He's doing stuff I had no idea how to do, like sweep picking, and his chops were just remarkable, right? And he's just doing his thing. And I was like a deer in the headlights. And I was like, it's my first day, right? I'm like, what? Can I curse on this thing?
Yeah, you can. Yeah. Whatever.
You can always beat me out. It's like, what the fuck am I going to do, right? And he looks at me and he goes, hey, bro, what do you do? And it was one of those moments. It was fight or flight, which is a defining moment in your life, right? And certainly for mine. And part of me wanted to just pack my bags and go back to Jersey. But the other part of me was like, well, okay, what do I do? And I had just I realized I am not Eddie Van Halen. So that's out. But I'd started really getting into Stevie Ray Vaughan and the blues and the Allman Brothers. So I started playing some blues licks, and that got his attention. And the next day, literally, man, I bump into this guy named David Steele, who's one of my best friends in the world. He lived here for years in Nashville, an amazing guitar player. I mean, he came to town after college. He played with John Prine. And then he left the John Prine gig for a Steve Earle gig, like late 90s. And then he played with Lucinda. And then he ended up, at the end of his career, playing for Gary Allen, which was a different type of gig, but it was a lot of fun. It was kind of like the Led Zeppelin of country music, kind of crazy. But yeah, so I got there, and he was an amazing blues guitar player. And I heard him play, and my playing went in one, like, my growth as a musician was like this. And then within 1 year, it went like that, because there were so many great players.
Yeah.
And that inspired me. And then I had a band, and it started off as like a jam band, like an Allman Brothers thing. But, my songs started off as like 6-7 minute songs. But that influence of the Beatles and all that, and pop music, because I used to devour pop music. Like I've told this one before, where when I was growing up, my older brother, who's not a musician, he and I used to listen to, do you remember the American Top 40 with Casey Kasem?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we used to, because the thing is, growing up in Jersey, I didn't listen to country music at all. Not because I didn't like it. I just wasn't exposed to it. The only country music I was exposed to is we had an 8-track tape of Hank Williams Sr.'s Greatest Hits, which was a good thing to have, because I loved that. But, yeah, man, I started writing songs and getting it to where I was honing that craft, and they were turning from 7-minute songs to 6-minute songs to 5-minute songs. And then by that point, I was kind of ready I graduated and was trying to figure out where to go. And somehow I ended up in Nashville, Tennessee.
Yeah. What year was that?
That was in 1993.
Okay.
So 30 years. This is my 30th year.
Yeah.
In fact, what are we today? We're September 18th. In about a month, it'll be literally the 30th anniversary of me and my buddy Ben driving down here.
Wow. That's awesome. We need to celebrate. We need to do something big.
Yeah, it's a big deal, man.
Yeah.
Because it turned out, none of it turned out the way I thought. I mean, I was trying to be a rock star, and in 1993, Nashville was not a rock scene, man. There was nothing. In fact, it was one of those type of things. I don't want to say there was nothing. There was some good stuff, but it wasn't a scene on the map. Like the Coasts, which were the people signing rock acts, they didn't take Nashville seriously. This is before the Black Keys and Jack White and Kings of Leon and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's changed a lot.
Right.
But, we did it for like 6 years and played a lot of great gigs, and then my 6-minute songs were becoming 4-minute songs and 5-minute songs and all stuff. And there were still solos and stuff, because I've always been a guitar player.
Yeah.
But it turned into something where it was like I was starting to write. I was no longer just writing with the other guitar player in the band, who wasn't much of a writer. He wasn't really. I don't think he'd deny that he wasn't really a writer. And it turned into something where now I was writing lyrics and music, and I felt like I had a vision for a song.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what to do, and then I ended up meeting a guy from a publisher in town named Daniel Hill. I don't know did you know Daniel?
Yeah.
From Cal 4?
Yeah.
And Daniel wanted to sign me. My band had broken up by then. He wanted to sign me to a publishing deal and try and get me a record deal as like a solo artist, kind of like a John Mayer, Eric Clapton type thing, like a bluesy, soulful pop thing. And we tried that, and it just wasn't working. And then I wrote one day with Anders Osborne. We wrote "Watch the Wind Blow By."
Yeah.
Tim McGraw.
Yeah. I mean, and let's dive into that, because you've had, the number ones that you've had are also with like mega artists.
Some big artists, yeah.
So,
very lucky,
which
very
is
fortunate.
very fortunate.
Yeah.
So, let's dive in and tell the story behind, some of those, whether it's Tim or Jason or Jake. I mean, they're all great songs, but like, especially, Barefoot was a massive hit for you and Jake.
Huge. I mean, it's a life-changing song for everyone involved. Myself, Eric, our friend Terry Sawchuk, as well as Jake. I mean, Jake has told me himself how much that changed his life. And I mean, he could almost argue it helped change Joey Moy's life, because Joey, obviously had lots of success before that. But I think that was one of his first things in town that he did, because he co-produced that with Rodney Clawson, who's one of my best buddies. And that song, for that time, it was just remarkable, man, because when it hit, we just did a little work tape of it. We didn't do a big demo of it. It was just Eric on one of those, what do we call the Nashville tuning string, where it's just like the high strung thing, singing it. And Terry Sawchuk, our co-writer, great producer, builds tracks and stuff. And he came up with that loop, the which was kind of like a Jack and Diane type thing, right? And he made that, so all you hear in that demo is Eric doing that with that thing and singing the hell out of it. And then Joey and Rodney, what they did is they took that loop thing and they just put it on steroids. And I'm not saying that was the first song that had all that stuff, but that was that big song that really, I think at that time, really helped change things for good or for bad, depending on how you look at it. For me, it was good. It was great, because it turned out it became such a big song. And it was just something that, I thought they just did a great job on it. And it happened at the last second, man. It was the last song that they cut on that album.
Yeah.
And it's the title track. So they had another title track.
Yeah.
And that story, I mean, I'll tell you that story before I even tell you about the story of writing it. I mean, that was amazing, because I was at the end of my deal at the time. So I needed a hit, man. I didn't know what I was going to do. And I get a phone call from Rodney Clawson that he says, "Man, did you write that Barefoot Blue Jean Night song?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Man, we're cutting it on Jake." And I didn't even know it, right? And, everything that could have gone right on that thing went right. We got so lucky, man. I mean, there's, anyone who out there in TV land, podcast land, watching this needs to know that, like, that's a great song. Like, I think it's just one of those. It's one of those songs that's great in the sense that it's a hooky song. Even if you don't like that song, it's going to stick in your head. Like, we did our job that day. We spoke about our own kind of, it's authentic. It's like from our own kind of childhoods and stuff, that feeling of being young and just in love with life and just enjoying stuff. And all those woes in there are, a product of me growing up in New Jersey, where we woe everything. I always joke around like we woe Amazing Grace in church and stuff. And, all those Springsteen songs have woes all over them, and Bon Jovi stuff. So we, whoa, it's all over that song.
Yeah.
So, but that wasn't enough. It's like Natalie, Eric's wife, at the time Eric Paslay's wife, was our song plugger. And she pitched that on the last Friday that Renee Bell was in that job. And Renee Bell, historically famous A&R person at the label, It's her last day. And she didn't have to even, probably because she could have canceled the
Yeah.
meeting, right? She takes the song, gives it to Jake. Jake listens to it all weekend long. And he told me himself that at the end of the weekend, he was breaking up with his girlfriend at the time. And his girlfriend literally is like leaving on Sunday. She's got all her shit packed and she's leaving. And he looks at her, and because I guess I don't know what kind of relationship they had, if he sought advice from her or something. But he said, you know, I love this song. He goes, but are there too many woes in it? He actually said that. Are there too many woes in it? And he told me that she looked at him and said, if you don't cut that song, you're an idiot. And she left. Now, most men in that situation with their pride would be like, what the hell with you? I'm not cutting that song. And he he still wanted to cut it. He goes into the studio on Monday, and Rodney Clawson, again, a good buddy of mine, had already heard that song, even though it had never been cut, because Eric used to write with Rodney's wife, Nicole, who before Nicole had really hit the stratosphere, was kind of younger and writing songs, and her and Eric were buddies. So she had heard that song and had it like on her iPod or iPad, whatever those things were called at the time.
Yeah.
And Rodney knew it. So when Jake played it for him on Monday morning, Rodney's like, oh, I know that song. It's my buddy Dylan's song. That's a hit song. And next thing you know, they cut it. And the rest is freaking history, man. I mean, that thing was, we wrote that 4 months beforehand. They cut it. 9 months later, it was a huge 2-week number one. And then we found out in 2020 that it was the most played song of the last decade on country radio, which is an incredibly humbling thing. I mean, how many songs were out there and how many huge songs. And it's just that song just really became its own, it's just huge. It's just crazy. I sometimes can't believe it.
This episode is brought to you by Sennheiser microphones. When we first started this podcast, we were using some older microphones, and Sennheiser came in and sponsored us and gave us some MK4s and 914s. And I mean, I'm telling you, it's made all of the difference in the world. We love these microphones. We use them at the listening room as well. And I just can't say enough great things about them. Go check out Sennheiser.com. If you are into music in any way, their microphones are hands down the best on the planet. Go check them out, Sennheiser.com. And thank you, Sennheiser, for the support and the sponsorship. We love y'all. What about take me into the writer's room with Terry and Eric? How did the idea come about? And
so, you write songs. It's like some days someone's got title, some days someone's got a melody, some days someone's got some lyrics kind of scattered around. And, Eric and I at the time were writing. Eric was the intern initially at Cal 4 at the publishing company I was at. And, you know Eric very well. He's a brilliant artist, but he when you meet him at first, he's a little socially awkward.
Sure, yeah.
And he was 10 times more socially awkward at like 20. You probably remember him back then.
Oh,
too.
yeah.
He's a really tall guy and sweetheart of a guy.
Yeah.
And super talented, but just would kind of say non sequiturs and you wouldn't know what the hell he's talking about. And but he and I kind of started writing together because one day back in the tape room, remember they used to call those things tape rooms. The guy in the tape room said, you should write with Eric. And I was like, that tall, weird guy is always kind of lingering around. And he goes, yeah, man, he's great. And I was like, all right, why not? I'll try it. And we got together and I was in from the downbeat. The moment I heard that kid sing and I heard him saw him write, and he had great ideas. And he, Eric's such a great writer because he never settles. It's like, one thing that bothers me about writers, including my own writing at times, is that it's very easy to be lazy. Like say, oh, that's good. I like that. It feels good. No, it feels great, And sometimes that works, but sometimes it doesn't. And when you have someone like Eric who doesn't mess around, like he's always searching for that next great line. Mm-hmm. I've seen it because he and I used to write every week for like 3 years. So I would watch him search for time. Well, I thought we had the line, and then he'd dig deeper, and there it was. It would be a better line. So we were writing with Terry that day, Sawchuck, and I just started telling this story. I don't even know what made me talk about it, but I was at a U2 concert in Philadelphia in 1988, man. I was 17 years old. At the old JFK Stadium where they had Live Aid. Remember Live Aid? In the 80s, they had that big, huge thing.
I don't. No.
I guess I'm a lot older than you are.
You're not that much older.
Yeah,
I don't know.
You know Live Aid. Live Aid was that thing they had. It was after remember the USA for Africa thing with raised money for the people starving in Africa.
Yeah.
So they had this huge concert in Wembley Stadium and also in Philadelphia at JFK.
Okay.
So U2 was playing there in 1988 in the Joshua Tree Tour, the top of the height of their powers, right? And I'm there. It's like 100,000 people there, and I'm on the lawn, like 30 feet from the stage, and with my buddies, and it's a beautiful September night, like around this time of year.
Yeah.
And they start playing. I gotta play the song because it only makes sense. So I'm there, and they start playing one of my favorite U2 songs called "Bad," and it goes, "If you twist and turn away," and I remember like. And I was stoned out of my mind. It was I was 17, I was in high school. And I turned around, and all you could see, man, for miles and miles, it seemed, were lighters. Everybody was holding up lighters. Yeah. And fast forward 22 years, and I start telling that story to Eric and Terry, and Eric starts strumming those chords to Barefoot Blue Jean Night out of nowhere. You know, he starts smiling, starts strumming that thing, and we just spit that song out in like 90 minutes, man. And it was so funny because, you know, again, Eric's always looking for the right line, right? So it goes, "Whoa, never gonna grow up, never gonna slow down. Whoa." And I said, "We were shining like lighters in the dark in the middle of a rock show," which is, if I may toot my own horn, and that was one of the best lines of that. That's the best line of that song. It's definitely one of the best lines I've ever written. And Eric didn't like the line. He liked the image of the line, but it didn't rhyme. Like it should be, "Whoa, never gonna grow up, never gonna slow down." He thought it should be shining like something in a small town, right? And I was like, dude, because he didn't know the image. He wasn't a guy in my age. He wasn't used to doing that. And luckily, Terry was my age. And Terry was like, "No, man, he's right. Dylan's right. You got to have the lighters and stuff." So we put that in, and sure enough, 6 months later, we're at Jake Owen's concert at the Bridgestone with Keith Urban, and we're buying a T-shirt for my daughter, and it says Barefoot Blue Jean Night on it. He's like, "Oh, that's awesome." We hold it up, and I turned it around, and it says, "Shining like lighters in the dark."
Nice.
In the middle of the rock show. I said, "What do you think about that, motherfucker?" And so it's like, it was just one of those moments, man. That day just flowed. We wrote it in 90 minutes, and you know, another thing about this town, man, and you know this too, it's like that song was passed on, put on hold and passed on by both Luke and Dirks, as far as I know. And that doesn't mean those guys were wrong. I mean, as you know, it's like their albums might have been looking for something that wasn't that. And it's easy now to be an armchair quarterback and say, well, how could they pass on that song? But as you know, it's like everybody, all these artists are just either writing hit songs all the time or being flooded with songs that sound like hits. So what they have to do is find the one that fits in their thing. And luckily, Jake heard it at the time that he did, and it was just undeniable for him. And it changed his life and all of ours.
Yeah. Well, you want to play part of it?
I would love to. And I'll say this too, they changed a couple lines in there. And, you know, sometimes in this town, man, I think more so now than in the past, you know, an artist will change some lines and suddenly want credit for the song.
Right.
Co-writing credit. None of that. They didn't do any of that. They changed it, and, you know, they made better changes. But, yeah, so it just starts off with a... shining bright, edge of the water, we were feeling alright. Back down a country road, the girls are always hot and the beer is ice cold. Yeah. Cadillac, horns in the hood, my My buddy Frankie had his dad at the mud. The girls smiled when we rolled by. They hopped in the back and we cruised to the riverside. Whoa, never gonna grow up. Whoa, never gonna slow down. We were shining like lighters in the dark in the middle of a rock show. Whoa, we were doing it right. Whoa, yeah, coming alive in the southern summer, barefoot blue Jean night. Ooh.
Yeah, man. Love it.
That's it, man.
Yeah. So, yeah, how was that? Like, walk me through, just the feeling inside. Cause like, I mean that, you've had, again, great success, but, just, I was talking to, someone else on a different podcast not too long ago, just about like all of the stuff that happens behind the scenes.
Yeah.
That, like when a song finally gets there, and especially songs that just take off like that and become super successful. Yeah. And like that one, the most played song of the decade.
Yeah.
The months and sometimes years of, like basically growing up with that song, that happens that people don't ever know, unless they live in this world that we live in Nashville. Like just so once those things started like pouring out, like, what was that like for you?
Well, it's interesting. So like I said, that first number one I had with Tim McGraw was 2004. It was the first song I'd ever had cut. Again, I was trying to be a rock artist.
Yeah.
So that was an accident, kind of a happy accident.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But, that thing hit. And then by that point I was married and had a daughter. So me and my ex decided at the time, it was like, I just, maybe I'll focus on this songwriting thing, because I didn't really like going on the road and everything. So I did that, but that was, again, nobody knew me. It was like I had put in my 10,000 hours in town, but not on Music Row. So, we called it 10-year town. I moved in 93. The song went number one in 2004. So I had done my 10 years.
Yeah.
But nobody on Music Row knew me because I was in the rock scene. So I had to kind of reintroduce myself to people with a number one song. So that's a nice calling card to have. But you know how it is. It's like people are kind of like, all right, do it again. Let's see what else you can do. So it took me 7 years, man. And it was tough. And it was, I went through a divorce at the time, which was really tough. And it was a struggle. And then we wrote that song. And within a 3-year span, I had like bam, bam, bam. I had that. And the next year, literally that went number one Labor Day of 2011. And then 2012 around Labor Day, Take a Little Ride by Aldean went number one. So what happened? And then I had Chase Bryant's debut single, which was a top 10.
Yeah.
All within like a 3-year span. So the result that had for me is, it definitely opens doors. It definitely got me into more rooms and different rooms and with different artists and writers. And it also got me to a point where my initial deal, I was suddenly a free agent. And I had all these companies vying for me, which was humbling. And it was intoxicating. I'm not going to lie. It was like, holy shit, people are suddenly digging what I do. And I signed a deal with a company that was a bigger deal than I'd ever had. And it didn't really pan out. But, that's where it gets to my next chapter of my life, which is that, tomorrow I will be 4 years sober. And during this time, from like 2009 to 2019, I was a full-blown alcoholic, so I was really struggling. So it was difficult. Like I was writing songs, and I had confidence in that because success breeds confidence.
Yeah. For
writers and for anyone, but that's kind of tempered by the alcoholism because when I was drinking like that, I did. I wasn't believing any of the press anyone would say about me. Like people would tell me I was great, or people do it. I hated myself. So I was just showing up I loved playing music. Like if I was playing here or the Bluebird, or when I used to play at Belcourt Taps in my blues band, those are the happiest days of my drinking years, because playing for people and performing my songs and singing and playing, that's as happy as I ever am. But I was just miserable at that time. So it was a difficult time. It's like I had all this success, but I don't know, man. I just kind of lost that desire to really I was kind of just surviving instead of thriving, or like seeking that next thing. Because I was kind of dying inside, man. So it was a difficult time to have that success. I'm grateful for that success because it really, it helped me get through those years. I mean, financially, I'd been in a hole for my divorce and everything. And, it really kind of, it opened doors, but at the same time, I was closing doors because of my drinking.
Yeah.
Like a door would open, and instead of running through it with a great opportunity, I would either shudder from it or recoil because of my own issues.
Yeah. Well, man, we've known each other for a long time. Yeah. So, I've kind of, I watched you go through that path. And 4 years, man. Congratulations.
Yeah. Tomorrow will be 4 years, man. And I was, I was flying to a BMI gig down in Captiva Island, and got so drunk at the airport that I got arrested, and blackout drunk. I have no recollection of anything. And buddies of mine who were already on that plane, like Win Varble and even Stevens and stuff, were texting me, like saying, "Hey man, they're calling your name. Where are you at?" And I was blacked out, arrested, and dragged to a hospital bed. And then some of my best friends, wonderful writers, guys Marshall Altman, and Bryce Long, and Mason Hunter from BMI, they came over that day and they did an intervention with my ex-wife, who I'm still close with, and my beautiful daughter, Isabella, who at the time was 18. And they said, "We're taking you to rehab," because they didn't want to see me. I was killing myself. I was basically, my blood alcohol that day at the airport was like 0.3, over 0.30. I mean, that's like legal limit's 0.08.
Yeah.
I mean, and I've told this to them many times, how grateful I am to every one of them, because I know this much, the way I was, before Marshall, Bryce, and Mason showed up, I was to manipulate my ex-wife to go home, telling her I was fine, everything was be all right, so I could just walk to the liquor store and drink some more. I mean, I'm just grateful to be sitting here with you, talking about music, which I love so much. It's like, music was so hard for me during those years, but it's like, it's something that was never very hard for me, if I'm being honest. Like I put a guitar in my hand and a microphone from me, I feel so comfortable.
Right.
But I was so uncomfortable in my skin at that time. So yeah, it's remarkable what it has done for my life. And it also changed my trajectory, because, when I got out of rehab, I did 30 days in rehab, man. When I got out, my deal was about to expire. So, and when you first get out of rehab like that, you're just trying to stay sober. I mean, it's a challenging thing. I mean, we play in bars. I remember when I was in rehab, I had some of my counselors were like, "Well, you might want to rethink what you do for a living." And I was thinking, why the hell would I do that? You want to take away the one thing that makes me happy. I said, you want to ensure I'm going to drink again, do that. So I had to learn how to do it. I had to learn how to play here or anywhere. But I mean, like a place like here, man, I mean, I would come in before the show and I would have a couple drinks to get myself settled, and I'd drink while I was on the stage. And I'll never forget, I played here that first gig, and Jack was, remember Jack?
Yeah.
She was the bartender, and she came around, gave me a hug, and gave me a ginger ale. And you know what? I was all right with that ginger ale, man. And so my deal expired, and it was the beginning of 2020, and I'm sitting there, I'm like thinking, well, what am I going to do now? It's like, well, I'm sober now. I'm going to just get my new deal, and I'm going to be better than ever, right? And then what happens? I start taking meetings, and what happens? The pandemic. So the business kind of shut down for a couple months there. And then I had major neck surgery, man. I don't know if I told you that. Like I had a stenosis thing on my neck where your spinal cord gets constricted. So what happened is I couldn't use my left hand for like a year. And they thought it was carpal tunnel, and I had surgery for that and this and that. And it was all during the pandemic. And then finally, I had to have this major neck surgery. And what all that did, having to go through all that and the pandemic, trying to be sober, is it made me focus on my sobriety and focus on, well, what do I want to do anymore? And I determined that as much as I love writing songs, and as much success as I've had, I was ready for a new chapter.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do, not that I don't write, I write a lot still.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to chase the Music Row thing anymore. Again, there's nothing wrong with it. I did it for a long time, but I had kind of had my fill, because by the end it wasn't fun. My last year of writing for the market when I was drinking, it just wasn't fun. It was starting to become a chore. I felt like it was something that I either didn't like what I was writing, or the ones I was writing that I liked either weren't getting through, or they were getting through to the last second, and it just became exhausting. So I started focusing on other things, man. I write, blues stuff with Kenny Wayne Shepherd, because I play guitar. I'm a blues guitar player. I've had a song that was cut by Kingfish, a wonderful blues guy out there. Joanne Shaw Taylor, another artist, did that. I
used to come watch you guys like on a monthly basis with that blues band. I'm drawing a blank. Who was Gabe?
Yeah.
Gabe Dixon. And was it one of the Wooten brothers? Who else was in it with you?
So at that time it was Nick Buda on drums, Allison Presswood on bass, and Gabe Dixon on keys.
Yeah.
But this town, man, it's like we are so lucky in this town. It's like, okay, so let's just say you. Okay, so Chris Blair, you're a writer, so you can write with all these great writers, or you can open up a club where people from all over the country and the world can come, and every night you can have top-notch, and there's not better writers in the world than there are in Nashville.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing with musicians. So when I would book gigs for my blues band, those are my core group. Gabe Dixon, who I've known for 30 years, one of my best friends, great writer, great pop guy. And I used to tell people, man, he's one of the best keyboard players in the world. And they'd say, this guy is playing in this little club with you? Well, now he's playing with Tedeschi Trucks Band.
Yeah.
One of the best bands in the world. So, yeah, I would still say he's one of the best guys in the world. And all of those musicians are badasses. And I knew it was great when one day, early on in my Belcourt Taps gigs, I called 4 of my drummers. None of them could do it. And one of them gave me the number of this guy named Jack Bruno. Good guy, great guy, Jack, great musician. Jack came and did the gig, was amazing. Well, Jack played 22 years with Joe Cocker. So we live in a town where the 5th call drummer for a schmuck writing a blues band is the guy who played with Joe Cocker, among other people, So I kind of just started focusing on stuff I loved. I sold some catalog, which helped me, again, recover. That's the thing about staying sober. I'm in recovery, which means I know I can't drink anymore. And I'm okay with that. I've come to acceptance with that. And so I have other joys and loves. And one of the things I'm doing now, if I can plug something.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about,
is I'm doing this cooking show.
Yeah, with your daughter.
With my daughter, Isabella. I don't know if you'd ever seen, I did during the pandemic, like a little Instagram thing where it's like 7-minute clips and stuff. But this is something where, my little brother, who's passed away, it just was 19 years he died. We were so close. He was one of my best friends. He was my best friend, essentially. He died of complications from type 1 diabetes, and he was a wonderful chef. So I learned to cook kind of from him, and then from him I started watching. We just had our daughter at the time, so it was the early days of Food Network, so I was watching Food Network all the time. And so I always wanted to do something where I did that, had cooking on a show, had music on a show, and then had humor. Because I don't know if you knew this about me, but I used to dabble in not only stand-up comedy, but Marshall will kill me for saying this because he says I should never let this out in public. But I used to be a clown. I used to work as a professional clown.
I did not know that about you.
Yeah. I was a clown.
Oh my gosh,
named
I love
Lenny
it.
the Hobo. Back in
Winnie the Hobo.
the Hobo back in Six Flags Great Adventure, New Jersey.
Yeah.
2 summers. I was a great clown. I was a serious method clown. I never broke character.
That's awesome, man. We got to dig up some old pictures of that.
Oh yeah, I
sure.
can show you one for
Yeah.
sure. It's in my phone. But yeah, man. So I just want to do something that makes me happy. And
Yeah.
what makes me happy is playing shows. Like, I love playing here. I love playing around town. I do festivals out of town. I love doing all that. I love playing with my blues band, and I love writing with stuff I want to write now these days. Because I've just realized that, the key to me being a happy, sober person the rest of my life is doing stuff that makes me happy. Life is hard enough. Even in an ideal situation, life's going to keep coming at me, and just when you think you're doing great, something bad's going to happen. So I try to just be as happy as possible. And this show idea I have called Dylan Altman's Soul Stew. That's what it's called. We're just doing it. We're shooting it in my house, in my kitchen, in my living room, and I cook. And then, like, for example, Gabe Dixon was my first guest, and I cook, and I try to cater the dish to the person, the artist I have. And Gabe's a vegetarian, and I'm from Jersey. I'm a big Italian cuisine guy, so I made an eggplant rollatini, which is like eggplant parmesan, but you load it up with ricotta cheese and stuff, and roll it up, put sauce on it, bake it in the oven. It's amazing. So I cook. We splice in some humor in there. He and I have a conversation about food and music. And then right there in my living room, he sings a song on my piano, and then he and I play a song together. And, that's the type of show I would want to watch.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to do something that hopefully works out. And again, it gets me to work on my daughter, who I just adore. She's my only child, and she's a great kid and super talented. So, yeah, man, I'm just chasing that. And I don't know if it's going to work, but I'm willing to just kind of try it now. And again, I still write songs, and I'm so grateful for my success I've had in this town, and all the wonderful writers we both know. I mean, it's like, it's so funny, man. The music business, when I talk to people, civilians, as we would probably call them, who aren't in the business back home and stuff about it, it's like, it's an awful business. There's this great quote. It's like, it's dog eat dog. It's actually worse than dog eats dog. It's dog doesn't return other dog's phone call,
Yeah.
And, but that's all right, because though both of us probably met some of the shittiest people in the business and that we've ever known, some of the best people I've ever known are in this business, man. Like the writers and musicians are some of my dearest friends, and super talented, kind, good people. So, I have nothing but gratitude at this day. It's like I look at, especially sitting here with you today, a guy I've been playing in 3 iterations of your club.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I played in the one in Franklin ever.
Yeah.
I was a little before me. But I've done that. And then, again, a day before my 4-year sobriety day, where my life changed forever. Yeah. I always tell people, it's like the best day of my life is the day Isabella was born. The second best day of my life was the day I was arrested at the airport and dragged to rehab, because it changed my life, man.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's all the things I used to think when I was thinking about stopping drinking, but was scared to. I was like, will I be able to write songs anymore? Will I be able to play guitar? Will I be able to sing? Will I be funny? All that stuff. It's all bullshit, man. All that stuff is nothing. I can do all that stuff better than I did. And it's just, and because I'm present, man. It's like when I do a round now, instead of like looking constantly down at my drink to see, I'm almost done. I got to get the attention of the bartender so I can get someone to bring me up a drink. Now I'm listening to my co-writers, and I'm playing guitar behind them, trying to be as tasteful as I can, and just doing the thing and connecting. Because in my sad, dark years, I was lacking that. So, yeah, that's where I'm at.
Man, I'm so proud of you. It's been a blast sitting down with you today, and
Thanks, man.
And being a small part of your story.
Yeah.
Man. So when with the cooking show, like, when can people start to check that out?
We were hoping to target. We're going to do a YouTube channel, though I'm going to do other things to try and get more viewership and maybe a sponsor or maybe even take it to get someone behind it.
Yeah.
But we're shooting for a YouTube launch probably be mid to late October.
Okay.
Because I've already got 4 shows shot. We just got to edit them together, and then we'll start posting them. But as we get close, I'll start flooding stuff with that, so people will know.
Well, and by the time this episode comes out that everybody's listening to, it's probably going to be around that time too. So you just text me and we'll put all the information in the liner notes, man. And we'll push it so everybody can check that out. It's I love to eat and I love music, so I can't wait to.
Man.
I love to cook, so.
Well, there'll be some good recipes then for you.
Good deal.
Again, I'm not a chef. I don't pretend to be a chef, but I love to cook and I'm pretty good at it. And I have real reverence for it. It's like, just like I have, I have nothing but respect for the people who are my guests.
Yeah.
It's like, I love music. I love people. I love food. I love laughter. And I'm just trying to combine it all in one thing. And who knows, man, maybe in 5 years we'll be talking about this and I'll be doing a live version of my show on your stage here, which would be incredible because it's taken off so much. And maybe not. But either way, I know this much. I'm able to try it now in a way I never would have when I was drinking because I was just ruled by fear. And now it's like I go towards love, man. I want to do stuff that makes me happy, and hopefully I can share it with other people, man. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, before we wrap up, I always end with the same question. So, everything that you've gone through in Jersey and your rock days and your blues band days and getting here and great success with multiple number ones and going through sobriety, everything. If you go back to Jersey and talk to 8-year-old Dylan today, what advice do you give yourself?
Well, I would tell him to enjoy the ride, definitely, because the things that we think are going to happen more often than not don't happen. But if we're open to change and stuff, we'll find that what does happen is pretty damn good, or you're okay with it. And it's funny because I have a song. It's like the answer to that question is a song I wrote with Will Hogue, one of my best buddies and a great artist here in town, called Too Old to Die Young. And we wrote that because Will and I came up in the mid-'90s in town here in our mid-20s, and we were dreaming still. Rock and roll stardom was still attainable in our minds. And we kind of fell apart. Grew apart, and just because he was on the road and stuff. And then we met again. We reconnected in like 2011, 2010, after he had an almost fatal accident, and I'd gone through my divorce. And we wrote that song, Too Old to Die Young. And the idea behind the song is just that. It's that, the guys we were in our mid-20s, or when I was 8 years old, you expect something different. You want something different. But you suddenly wake up at 40, and with what you have, you wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. Now, granted, at that time I was starting to drink too much, but I would not have traded writing songs and having my daughter. Like, my daughter was my absolute pride and joy to that day, and she still is now. So, I would just say that, man, that life is going to throw us curves, and just try to find happiness and do stuff that makes you happy.
Yeah. Love that.
And don't hurt people. Be kind to people. I would say that too.
Yeah. Man, love it. It's been a pleasure, dude.
Yeah, man.
Great seeing you. Yeah.
Really appreciate you having me.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to do it again as a kind of like a cooking show.
Let's make that happen.
Yeah.
We'll see. Maybe in a year or two, but even 5 years too far out, I'll have something
That's right. Yeah.
tangible, and we'll be able to do like a show at the listener where there's music and cooking.
I love it. And Italian food's my favorite. So,
there you go, man.
Yeah. So we'll do it. So. All right. Well, thank you guys, everybody out there listening. And again, go check out the liner notes, and we'll put links to find this cooking show and everything else. And this has been another episode of Stories Behind the Songs with Dylan Altman. We'll see you next time. This has been an episode of Stories Behind the Songs with Chris Blair. For more information after the show, head over to chrisblair.com. That's where you can find information on these episodes, trailer notes, video links, all kinds of great stuff. Also, make sure to leave us a great rating on iTunes like and follow us on Spotify, YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. I really hope that you think this show is awesome, and we really appreciate the love and support. I promise to keep gathering great content and continuing to sit down with more amazing songwriters and artists as we grow. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks for the support. We'll see you next time.